Season 3 of Warzone 2 is finally here, and I've got for you guys the best updated settings for maximum FPS, visibility, and visual fidelity. A quick disclaimer before we jump into this: a bunch of the settings here might not have changed much since Season 2 Reloaded, but I wanted to do an updated guide so that new or returning players who haven't played in a while can get the best settings and get this game running as good as possible. So starting with the display area of the graphics tab, display mode needs to be at full screen exclusive. I don't care if you like running full screen borderless because it gets you nice quick alt tabbing. Full screen exclusive gives you the best overall input latency, best responsiveness, best feeling in game, so make sure you've got this set. Then display monitor and display adapter just need to be set to the correct monitor and correct GPU. For most of you guys, it'll be very obvious to have these things set correctly. Screen refresh rate, just set this to auto. It should automatically put it to the refresh rate of your monitor. I've got a 240 Hz monitor. It says 239.97, but don't worry about that. It will just be whichever number here is closest to your refresh rate. So if you've got 144 Hz, it'll be this one. If you've got a 60 Hz, it'll be this one, but setting it to auto should do the job for you. Same thing goes for display resolution. You should just be able to set this to auto and it will automatically pick your native resolution and ensure the resolution of the game is correct. Dynamic resolution, just keep this off. Aspect ratio, once again, just set it to automatic and it will pick the correct one for you. VSync for gameplay and menus both need to be off. I know it can help with the screen tearing if you've got a lower refresh rate monitor, but the input latency it adds is definitely never worth it. Custom frame rate limit, I always say this, a lot of people will just say put this to unlimited and get the most FPS possible, but it's actually better if you come down here, click show more, and you set up something like this. So your gameplay custom frame rate limit just above the refresh rate of my monitor, so 250, whereas my refresh rate is 240. I'm never actually going to hit that FPS value, but it means that I've got as much breathing room as I might need. Menu custom frame rate limit, I would turn this down to somewhere around 100 or so. This is still going to feel nice and smooth when you're navigating through your loadouts and just navigating the menus in general, but your GPU is going to have a little bit of a rest while you're in the menus. It's not going to be running the fans on overdrive in the menu. And then out of focus frame rate limit, which is the frame rate limit of the game when you alt tab and do something completely different, you can turn this all the way down to something like 30. This way, when you alt tab out, your PC completely basically puts the game to rest. So whatever you're doing on your second monitor doesn't lag because you've got the game open. The next editable option is display gamma. You just need to set this to 2.2 if you're on a monitor and 2.4 if you're on a TV. I'm on a monitor, so 2.2 for me. Then brightness, by default, it sets it at 50. I would ignore this not visible, barely visible, easily visible thing, and instead just turn this up to around 55 or 60. It's a bit personal preference, but this added little bit of brightness just in general adds a bit of visibility to the game. It brightens up some of those dark areas inside buildings and some of those shadowy areas. And lastly, in this menu, HDR, you need to have this off even if you have a HDR monitor like I do. It's something which is pretty much reserved for single player games and games which want to look nice with cool colors and nice lighting. It's not made for multiplayer games where we're trying to be competitive and we're trying to be able to see as much as possible, so make sure this is off. Moving on to the quality tab, the quality presets will be set to custom as we go down and change things, so don't worry about that. Render resolution, make sure this is set to 100. This means 100%. So if at the end of all of this you really need to gain some FPS and nothing I've told you has helped you out, probably means you're on a very old system, you can come here and you can turn down this percentage and you'll see you'll actually render out the game at a lower resolution. But for most people, just leave it at 100%. Upscaling and sharpening settings, I've got 2 videos covering this, which I'll link in the description down below, but I've actually got 3 different options that I'll quickly summarize in today's video. First one is if you just want the best sharp visuals possible and you don't care about losing, a couple of percentage FPS, then I would recommend you go straight to FidelityFX CAS and turn the CAS strength up to around 80 or so. I've found looks nice. This is personal preference and doesn't have any effect on FPS, so play around with this. This will give you a really nice sharp image overall and give you the best visibility. If you want to just gain FPS, maybe you're struggling with FPS, but you still want your game to look good, you don't want to have to turn down the resolution and make it really hard to see enemies, then I'd highly recommend you try out AMD FSR 2.1 with the AMD FSR preset set to quality. I have the whole video covering this. It's one of the ones I mentioned that will be linked down below, covering why AMD FSR 2.1 is such a good addition. If you're somewhere in the middle and you don't want to go with AMD FSR 2.1 because you don't like how it looks, and FidelityFX CAS maybe tanks your system more than you would like it to, then just set this to off and don't run any upscaling or sharpening, and just let the game look in its natural state. Anti-aliasing has two options, SMAA and filmic SMAA. This is an annoying one because the SMAA version, the non-filmic one, does give you better FPS, and if you're purely looking for FPS, you should select this one. However, if you can afford to lose a small amount of FPS, or if it doesn't affect your system too much, you should definitely try the filmic option because it gets rid of a lot of these annoying grainy shadows on walls and on surfaces that seems to be a bug in this game that we still haven't had resolved. So that's why I personally run the filmic option. If you need that FPS, just go with the non-filmic one. Anti-aliasing quality should be set to normal for pretty much all cases. Basically, normal looks way better than the low option. The high and the ultra quality options don't look much better at all than the normal version, but they do cost a bit more FPS, so I find normal is just the best overall balance of visual fidelity and visibility and FPS. In terms of setting your video memory scale, I have a whole video in which I cover this in depth, covering Warzone 2 stuttering problems. I will link that down below. Definitely go and watch that. But in summary, basically do not have this set to 90. A lot of people will say max this out so you give the game as much video memory as possible to run as good as possible. In actual fact, you should be lowering this as much as you can based on how good your GPU is. So I've got a very good GPU, a 3090, so I get the best results with the least stuttering running this at 50. If you are running a mid to low end system, I would actually run this at around 70. But I wouldn't go higher than 70 because you will start to experience more and more stuttering. Go and check out that video where I explain it more in depth. Texture resolution, very similar to the anti-aliasing quality that I explained earlier. Basically, low is going to be your best bet here. It has the best balance of FPS and visuals when you compare it to everything else here. I don't find any use in going all the way down to very low. It makes the game all look very mushy and the textures look terrible. So I think low is really your best balanced option. Texture filter anisotropic, however, you can leave this maxed out on pretty much every system unless you are literally running a potato. Anisotropic filtering in every game has little to no effect on FPS whatsoever, and it does make textures look considerably better when you're looking at them from a angle. Nearby and distant level of detail, chuck these both on low. They have seemingly no effect on the actual visual quality of the game. There's very few scenarios you'll see anything change by doing this, but you can gain a few FPS, so it's a no-brainer. And then clutter draw distance, we're actually going to be editing this in a config file later on, so it doesn't matter what we set it as in here. Particle quality and particle quality level, put these both to their lowest values. These can be FPS hogs. They can use up a lot of performance by having these turned up. It affects how fire and explosions look in the game. It will make them look considerably worse, but the FPS you gain is more than worth it. Bullet impact has no effect on performance. It's pretty much a personal preference thing. I like to leave them on because I think it just looks cool. And then persistent damage layers. This does have a small effect on FPS because it's all about the visual effects that are left on surfaces when explosions and fire happen on surfaces. You end up with those like kind of black dark spots. There's no real reason to leave these on beyond it, I guess, looking a bit more realistic. So I'd recommend you turn this off. Then shader quality. This is a massive performance killer. So turn this all the way to low. I've mentioned this before. When the game first came out, if you had this on low, all of your camos looked terrible, so a lot of people were running this at medium. That bug got fixed ages ago, so if you've still been running medium shaders, make sure you turn these back down to low. Tessellation is pretty much eye candy, which we don't care about from a competitive standpoint, so I'd recommend you turn that off. And then terrain memory, an interesting one actually, leave this at max. A lot of people would go and turn this down thinking it's going to gain them some performance, but actually there's little to no effect on performance changing this, but having the terrain memory maxed out gives you some nice additional texture fidelity in game. It's almost like a little secret option to just improve that overall visual fidelity for no performance loss. A really nice one to keep maxed out. On-demand texture streaming, definitely turn this off. We do not want to have textures downloading while we're playing the game. That just does not sound like something we want to touch whatsoever. And then streaming quality, you can also put this on low. It does have a little bit of an effect on what objects look like at very far distances, but you can only really notice that if you start taking screenshots and blowing them up to big sizes and actually taking a look at them. When you're running around in game, you won't notice a difference, and this can also gain you some nice FPS. And then volumetric quality definitely needs to be on low. This is a real performance killer if you turn this all the way up. It's nice for single player experiences where you get really nice fog and really nice light rays, but in Warzone, we don't care about this, so we need it as low as possible. Deferred physics quality and water caustics are all about how water looks in Warzone 2. Water is a big performance killer, and there is a lot of it on Al Mazrah, so you need to make sure you've got these turned off as well. It doesn't actually seem to have much effect on what the water looks like, even though it should do, which is a bit confusing, but you gain nice FPS, so it's a no-brainer to turn them off. Moving on to your shadow map resolution, this is very similar to the textures and the anti-aliasing quality. Put it to the second lowest setting, which is low. It looks way better than very low, but you don't lose much performance going up that one step, and you don't really gain much visual fidelity beyond that anyway, so low is a nice balanced option. Then screen space shadows and spot shadow quality, both of these can just be put to low and off. These are to do with shadows on your character, so when you're holding your gun, how shadows are cast on your hands and stuff. It's meant to make the game look more realistic, but it does affect performance just a little bit for no real reason, so nothing we need to really care about. Spot cache you actually want to have maxed out at Ultra. It says it has a high effect on VRAM, but it's been proven that having spot cache maxed out doesn't affect FPS and actually means that you stutter less. It's a weird one, no one seems to know why. Just set it at Ultra. Particle lighting we don't care about, so we'll turn all the way down to low, as well as ambient occlusion needing to be off. Ambient occlusion is all about darkening these corners and areas where maybe two objects meet and you get these shadows cast. It actually leads to areas where people can hide in, and it makes it actually harder to see people when you've got ambient occlusion turned up. Screen space reflections, turn these off because we don't care about reflections. And then static reflection quality as well, we can turn those down to low. Pretty similar reason to the screen space reflections. Weather grid volumes are then another no-brainer. The quality of weather effects, we don't care about those, turn them off. NVIDIA Reflex low latency needs to be set to either on or on plus boost for everyone. But which one should you pick? I've covered this before and I'll quickly try and cover it now. Basically, if you have a system where your GPU is considerably stronger than your CPU, maybe you've blown all your budget on a really nice GPU with a bit of a CPU bottleneck, in that scenario, you want to use on plus boost. However, if you're in a much more balanced out system where your GPU and your CPU are pretty similar to each other, then on is your best option. If you don't know which one is best for you, try running both of them for a few games and just see which one feels best and do your own benchmarking. Depth of field and world motion blur definitely need to be off. These will make it very, very difficult to play the game and actually spot enemies. It will completely ruin your visibility. Weapon motion blur, however, is a weird one. I personally always run this off because I don't like any motion blur, but some people have found that having weapon motion blur turned on helps with stuttering, helps with some of the lag you get when you start a game and you're jumping out the plane. So if that does happen for you, try turn this on, see if you like playing with it and see if it fixes it for you. Most people though, turn this off. And then film grain also, turn that all the way to 0. And lastly, the FOV tab. I like playing at 120 FOV because I always have, but honestly, anything over 100 FOV is a bit of personal preference, but it's going to be fine. ADS FOV, leave this at affected. Having this at affected means that by turning up our FOV, we maintain a decently wide FOV when we actually ADS. It also reduces the visual recoil a bit, which there is a ton of in this game, so affected is what most of the pros are still running. Weapon field of view, I like running this at wide. It moves the gun a bit further away from your face, and I feel like I get a little bit more visibility. Third person field of view, we don't care about because we're not playing third person. Vehicle field of view, I'd recommend you put this to wide so that when you're in a vehicle, you can see more. Once again, better field of view, wider field of view is in general a better thing. These camera movements, I like to turn these down to least so that we get the least camera shake possible. Helps out with overall visibility. Third person ADS transition we don't care about. And default spectator camera, I personally like to go straight to the game perspective if I'm viewing a teammate because it's better than that helmet cam thing, so you can change that here. The next changes we're going to be making are to the Warzone 2 config file. To find this file, you need to go to your Documents folder on your Windows Explorer, then Call of Duty, Players, and then the file that we're going to be editing is options.3.cod22. You might not see the .cst bit. I've got my file extension showing. If not, you'll just see the options3.cod22. Right click that and then go to edit, and it should open it within a notepad editor. First setting you want to find is async compute. By default, this will be set to true. We want to set this to false. There's been a lot of benchmarking done on this to prove that this does help with performance overall. In theory, what async compute should be doing is optimizing how our GPU and our CPU work together in terms of processing and running the game, but for some reason turning it on actually makes the game run worse. So make sure you got that set to false. The second setting to change in here is clutter max dist. Now this is that setting that I talked about earlier in game that I said we were going to be changing here. In game, when you set it to low, you don't actually get the lowest clutter max distance that you can get. In order to get this, you need to take this number here, the 100.00060s, copy that, and then put it in between the inverted commas, the speech marks, and just paste it there. That way, we're actually getting the real lowest value for this, and what you'll find is that in game, that setting will now just be blanked out. You just don't need to touch it in game from now on. This is a real help to FPS. And then the last setting we're changing in here is render a worker count, which should be set to the number of physical cores that your CPU has. To find out how many physical cores your CPU has, you can just do Control Shift Escape, then go to Performance, and then within the CPU tab, it will show here cores and logical processors. You just want whatever this number is here. So for me, that is 8. That's what I've put in here, and this will give you the best performance. After you've done all that, make sure that you close and save the file. And now there's one more window setting we want to change. So come down to the search area, search for graphics, go to graphics settings, and you'll see this option here, hardware accelerated GPU scheduling, or HAGS as many people call it. Now, the annoying thing here is that in theory, having this on should help performance in most games on PC. But for whatever reason, Warzone 2 is so broke that having this off is actually the best option for overall performance, less stuttering, and generally having a better time playing the game. So if you play a lot of different games, you might want to leave it on, but if you're primarily maining Warzone 2, you need to turn this off. Now that you've got your Season 3 settings locked in, you need to go and watch this video next, where I show you how to enable a secret sharpening setting that makes the visibility in-game go to pretty crazy levels beyond what most people think you can actually get out of Warzone 2. So go and check this one out next.